Welcome to my house for another Amazing Stories Unwrapped, the Facebook Live broadcast that is committed to bringing good news, the good news that lifts your spirits, puts hope in your heart, steel in your spine to overcome adversity, and a spring in your step. Now, if you go away better for spending time with us, we will have fulfilled our purpose for coming to you. Today, I'd like to talk to you about the healing power of forgiving those who have hurt you. Now, maybe you've been deeply wounded by someone, and what that person or those people did to you was so egregious, so devastating, that you've concluded that their actions are unforgivable. No matter what, you will never forgive them. But if you are honest, you will also admit that the resentment you feel is eating you alive. So here's the question. Are there some things so bad that they are beyond forgiveness? Are there limits to how much we should be expected to forgive? In my new book of 365 Amazing Stories, I wrote a true story that explains this question. Please allow me to unwrap this amazing story, and then to stay around for a couple of minutes while I share a few principles on how I learned to forgive people who were unspeakably cruel to me. I call this story, How to Forgive the Unforgivable. 89 of Simon's relatives were murdered in the Nazi Holocaust. As far as Simon knew, his wife was one of them. He barely escaped death several times as he was being funneled through 5 SS killing centers. One day, while he was still imprisoned, a nurse came looking for a Jew. Any Jew would do. An SS officer had made a deathbed request to talk to some Jew. So she led Simon to a man swathed in bandages. He had been burned over most of his body. Only his eyes were visible, and he couldn't talk above a raspy whisper. The Nazi officer ordered Simon to sit on the edge of his bed. He introduced himself as Karl Seidel and said that he was raised a Catholic and had joined the SS against his father's wishes. He then gasped out his final confession, as if this Jew were his priest. Seidel spared none of the horrifying details of his years as a Jew killer. He told Simon about the day he found a house where 200 Jews were hiding. That day he ordered his men to set the building on fire. He described the screams of horror and agony as people were being burned alive. He added that he had personally shot every man, every woman, and every child who had tried to escape that inferno. When Seidel finally finished his confession, the room was deathly still. Simon shook with hatred, but the SS officer desperately wanted absolution. In the mind of this dying Nazi, Simon sat in the place of every Jew that he had ever dehumanized, tortured, or murdered. Seidel whispered with urgency, "Jew, will you forgive me?" Simon sat for several seconds, looking down at the SS officer. Then he got up, walked away, leaving Karl Seidel to die without final absolution. 2 years later, Simon's camp was liberated. He had survived the last year on 200 calories a day. Miraculously, he was reunited with the wife he thought was dead. He went on to become one of the world's most celebrated Nazi hunter. Yet Karl Seidel haunted Simon until the day he died. Simon constantly tortured himself with questions about whether he was right in refusing to forgive the SS officer. He remembered a day when his camp work detail passed by a German military cemetery. He saw a sunflower that had been placed on each grave. and wondered if there was one on Seidel's grave. That question also haunted him for years afterwards. He just couldn't get Seidel, and his refusal to grant the SS officer's deathbed request off of his mind. So in 1976, Simon Wiesenthal, the world's most famous Nazi hunter, tried to exorcise the ghost of Carl Seidel by writing a book that became an international bestseller. It was called The Sunflower. In it, he discussed the possibilities and the limits of forgiveness, asking the question that haunted him as he walked away from a dying Seidel. In his bestseller, 53 distinguished theologians, jurists, human rights activists, Holocaust survivors, and victims of other genocides responded to his questions. Now, their answers prove one thing. There are no easy formulas to this issue of forgiveness, especially when we're called to forgive the cruelest, most egregious, most obscene acts committed against others, or those evil things that people continue again and again after you've given your forgiveness, and yet they continue to do that bad thing over and over again. Are you to continue to forgive? Apart from Jesus, there are no ultimate answers. Some 2,000 years ago, hardened religious leaders incited pagan Romans to nail a Jewish rabbi from Nazareth to a cross outside of Jerusalem. This Jew responded in the most amazing way to those who dehumanized, tortured, and murdered him. He prayed, "Father, forgive them." Simon Wiesenthal thought that forgiveness was a gift that you give someone else, and that Carl Seidel was unworthy of that forgiveness, that the things he did was unworthy of that forgiveness, that some acts are so heinous that they're beyond the pale of forgiveness. Surely we could understand a man who lost 89 of his relatives in the Nazi death camps, 6 million of his fellow Jews in the Holocaust. We can understand him not forgiving forgiveness to an SS officer who hunted down and murdered them in the most barbaric and inhumane ways. But maybe the only person Simon hurt by walking away from that dying and repentant SS officer was himself. He thought that forgiveness was a gift we give to others. But this is the truth that I want you to hear today. Forgiveness is the gift that you give yourself. I mean, the gift of ridding yourself of bitterness and resentment that eats away at your life. The gift of giving back to you the hours of time you're going to waste nursing those grudges. The gift of walking away from enslavement to the past. The gift of moving forward to better things in the future instead of being stuck with the hatred of the past. Many of those things which are still unresolvable because the person or the people like Carl Seidel are long gone, maybe even in the grave. So what do you do now to give yourself the gift of forgiveness? Number one, forgive others. Not so much to set them free, but to free yourself. Number two, like Jesus, ask your Heavenly Father to forgive them. He can do what you may not be able to do, or what you don't even have the right to do. I mean, ultimately, forgiveness is only His to give anyway. What I'm saying is this: put this issue you have with others in His hands. Number three, forgive also fast as you can. Time is no friend of bitterness. One of the dumbest sayings of all is this one: time heals all wounds. Wrong. That's not even medically correct. Time only causes wounds to fester, to get infected, even to get gangrene and cause you to lose parts of your body. The only thing that heals wounds is medicine. And the medicine that God prescribes is forgiveness. Number four, you can forgive even when other people don't ask for it or even want your forgiveness. They don't have to receive your gift for you to give it and then walk away. Remember, forgiveness is the gift you give yourself. It's the gift of walking away free from the hold of anger, from the hold of bitterness, from the hold of resentment in your life. 5, forgiveness may have to be given again and again. Every time the anger or the resentment rises up yet again, like sour bile from your emotional gut, immediately say yet again, I forgive. Again and again and again, I forgive, I forgive, I forgive. The longer you do it, the less you'll have to do it. Number 6, forgiveness is not forgetting. You may always remember what that person did to hurt you intellectually and in your mind. You may never allow them to be in a position to do it over again. You shouldn't do that. But you can ultimately let go of what they did to you. You can allow it to be turned into good in your life by growing from it and using your bad experience to help you to grow, to help others. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It just means letting go. Jesus on the cross let go and turned what his enemies were doing to him over to God. Father, you forgive them for what they're doing to me. I cannot tell you how many people I've talked to in the past who've been destroyed by not forgiving. I can't tell you how many evil acts done against me I've had to forgive. And some of them have been hard to forgive. Those memories still come up. I still have to say, Father, forgive them. Father, forgive them. I will forgive them. And I still have to let go again and again and again and again. You may have to too. But can I tell you this? Forgiveness is the gift you give yourself. I promise you this as we wrap up today, that forgiveness is the gift that keeps on giving. Been good being with you. I hope to see you again next week on Tuesday. I'll be coming to you on Tuesday from Israel. We'll be sending you news by way of our Facebook page on exactly when it is. Israel's at a different time period, 7 hours ahead of us. And you might pray for some of our group that's joining me. They're going out of Newark, New Jersey, out of Kennedy Airport. There's a huge storm coming into New York tomorrow. And so you might pray that they all make it safely, that we'll all be safe. And I'll be coming to you from several times from Israel. So stay tuned and hear what we have to share to you with you from the Holy Land. We'll be staying one day, actually standing in that spot where Jesus said, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they be. If you get a chance, grab hold of the one-year book of amazing stories, Barnes & Noble, Amazon.com, Books A Million, or robertapeterson.org. That's the best place. I'll send you the book with if you request it, with a signed copy, to sign directly to the person you want to give this book to. Makes a great Christmas present for both your friends that are people of faith and family that are people of faith, and those who are not people of faith. They'll just love the good stories. God bless. See you next time.